All right, we take your attention now to the growing investigation into possibly altered U.S. intelligence on ISIS. A source close to Central Command telling Fox News that the pressure on them included at least 2 emails saying that they needed to, quote, cut it out and, quote, toe the line when it came to their assessment of how things were actually going against ISIS. Were they asked to make it a rosier picture than it really was on the ground? So now you have the Pentagon and 2 House committees investigating these intelligence reports and whether or not there was pressure to change them, to alter them, to make them present a story that was different than the analysis that they were bringing in. So you've got the former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency asking, where was President Obama in all of this? Here's what he said.
The focus of this investigation ought to start right at the top. Where intelligence starts and stops is at the White House. The president sets the priorities, and he's the #1 customer. So if he's not getting the intelligence that he needs, if he's not paying attention to what else is going on, then something else is wrong there.
Joining me now, Indiana Republican Senator Dan Coats. He sits on the Senate Intel Committee. Senator, welcome. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. What's going on here?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, General Flynn was an outstanding director of defense intelligence, and I think we ought to understand what he is trying to say here. That is 2 things. One, we need to get to the bottom of this. These allegations are serious. It ought to be investigated. It will be investigated. By the second hand, the president gets intelligence from a number of sources. I spend hours a week in the Intelligence Committee. I know the types of intelligence, the amount of money we spend to get that intelligence, and people who risk their lives to get that intelligence. But Martha, let's face it here. All you have to do is pick up the paper today. All you have to do is tune into Fox to find out what's going on in the world. And the president, General Flynn is right. The president, in the end, decides what policies we take to address these threats. And those policies have been very inconsistent and very weak, and I think that's part of the problem. Investigation, yes. Plenty of intelligence goes to the president where he can make decisions, and his policy decisions, I think, have been the wrong decisions.
Yeah. You know, it's obvious from lots of reporting over the last at least, several months, a year, that there is a schism, that there are lots of people in the government, at the Pentagon, in Intel, who believe that this was presenting a much bigger threat than the president perhaps wanted to, see it. What do you think the inner dynamic is in here in the administration?
Well, that's what we have to answer. I think if we find that defense intelligence, which CENTCOM oversees this critical area in the Middle East, is manipulating that intelligence to put a rosier view on it, that could affect policy. That's very, very serious. On the other hand, the president simply can't just simply say, well, I've got the wrong intelligence and therefore my decisions were altered in that regard. He gets scores of other intelligence to weigh. He has a national security team, which allegedly has been labeled pretty weak, and I think it is. But nevertheless, it's the president who basically says, I'm doing it my way. Yeah. And I think his way has not been the way to go to deal with this threat.
I mean, when you think about President Obama coming into office on the heels of the Iraq War and the search for weapons of mass destruction and the discussion that surrounded whether or not our intel was correct on that, he came into office saying that he wanted to have a very transparent process, that he wanted the truth. He wanted it to be unvarnished. And that appears to be at question now. I want to play one more soundbite here that goes to the broader situation on the ground with ISIS from Mike Flynn. Listen to this.
I will tell you that the accuracy and the warnings that have been provided on the rise of radical Islamists over the last few years have been very, very clear. So what the president has actually received from the national intelligence system is pretty good intelligence, and I would say it's very accurate. So what he's done with that intelligence, from what we can tell right now, is he's taken on this really lousy policy.
Your reaction?
Well, General Flynn and I are on the same page on this one. The president does have numerous sources for collection. All that runs through his national security team, but ultimately in the end, he's the one that makes the decisions. And I think it's clear to most Americans and clear to anybody who's paying attention to this that the decisions he has made regarding this threat and the numerous threats we face around the world have been bad decisions. They haven't worked. And so, yes, let's investigate this. Let's make sure that, but let's make sure the president doesn't hide behind, oh, I got faulty intelligence.
Right.
That's the reason I put up the policies I did, and that's why it doesn't work. The buck stops at the White House. It stops at the president's desk. This president doesn't seem to understand that.
Well, when they were taking Mosul, the president called them the JV team and just recently said they were contained. So there's obviously a very different picture going on the ground. Senator, thank you so much. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you.